Hi guys, welcome to Classic Guitar Rock. I'm Jeremy, and I wanted to talk about the modes more. There seems to be a lot of interest in modes, and that's always been the case. People are always interested in modes. And I want to just show you the easiest way to understand the modes, and we won't even touch a guitar. So stand by. Okay, now I said we weren't going to touch a guitar, but we are going to play a keyboard. I am not a keyboard player. This is not my keyboard. It belongs to my keyboard player. One of the advantages of practicing in your basement is you get to play with all your band members' stuff. So during this quarantine, of course, they've left everything here, and they're lucky I haven't taken any of it to the pawn shop yet. But anyways, I'm just going to borrow Jerry's keyboard to demonstrate the modes, because I think this is the easiest way to understand it. When you're learning to play piano, they always start you out in the key of C, and specifically they start you out on middle C. That's a middle C. And the nice thing about the key of C is you don't have to play any of the black notes. Okay? I go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then it starts all over. All the white keys. That's nice and easy for us to figure out. What I just played is the major scale, specifically a C major scale. That is also the first mode. It's called the Ionian Mode. Now, this is really important to understand. There is a sequence or a pattern that each mode has. And anytime you follow that sequence or pattern, that's the mode you're playing in, right? And hopefully this will make sense. Here's the sequence or the interval pattern of a major scale. Okay, you play the root, in this case C, okay? Then you take a whole step. It's a whole step because I'm skipping the black key. Whole step, because I skipped a black key. Half step, I'm not skipping a key. Whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, so let me do that a little quicker. Play the root note, then I go whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So that pattern, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, is the interval pattern or sequence of a major scale or an Ionian mode. If you play any note followed by that same sequence, it's going to be a major scale or an Ionian mode. Okay, so let's try it with it. What key do you want to try it in? Let's try it in D. Okay, D. Then I do a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. I had to think about it because I had to play two black keys in there. But if I would have played that a little better, let's try it one more time. Okay, that's a major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. That's the major scale we all know. Notice I had to use black keys to keep my sequence. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Okay? Any note I play, doesn't matter. Any note I play, if I follow it with that sequence, it's going to be a major scale or the Ionian mode. Okay? So just keep that in mind, because that idea of the interval sequence, interval pattern, whatever you want to call it, that's key to understanding how the modes work. Okay? Now, I played C to C. That was my major scale or Ionian mode. What if I play D to D? It's all the same notes. It's all white keys, but I'm going to play D to D. Okay? Well, that might not seem like a big deal, but guess what? If I take D as my root and play that pattern, that is now the Dorian the D Dorian minor mode. Okay? All the same notes. It's the same 7 notes. But those same 7 notes are the C major scale, the Dorian minor scale. We can take it further. If I play E to E. Okay? That becomes the E Phrygian minor mode. Okay? Even though it's the same notes. Isn't that cool? What's next? F to F. This is Lydian. F to F is Lydian. G to G is Mixolydian. A to A is natural minor or Aeolian. And then last we have the Locrian mode, which would be this B to B. Okay? Those are all the modes. Okay? So while I'm playing in C major, I'm also playing in D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian or natural minor, and B Locrian. Okay? So what does that mean? You notice when I change the note I started on C to C, and that gave us that interval pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Okay? That's the interval pattern for a major scale or Ionian mode. What happens when I start at D? My interval pattern is now different. The Dorian interval pattern is, okay, there's the root. Then I go whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Okay, that's a different pattern. It's the intervals that make it sound different. Okay? And even though I'm playing the same notes, okay? Let me give you an example. Here's C. And I'm not a keyboard player, but this will just give you a feel. And the nice thing about doing it in C is there's no black notes. So I'm going to just noodle around in C. Oh, I threw in a D minor. Okay, wasn't that happy? That was a C major. Okay? Now, I'm going to play something in D minor. See how different that sounded? The same exact notes, but because I'm playing them against a different chord, it sounds completely different. We went from very happy sounding to something a little more sad. But it's the same notes, okay? C major and D Dorian are the same notes. So while I'm playing in C major, I'm also playing in D Dorian, okay? So that begins to really open things up. And it doesn't stop there, obviously, because I can do the same thing from E to E. It's the same 7 notes. I'm going to play, this is going to be an E Phrygian, and it'll sound even a little more dark than the Dorian did. Listen. Okay? Same notes, but I'm playing them against a different chord. Okay? And just like I showed you on the D, if I were to play these from E to E, it changes the interval pattern. Okay? So let's just do it real quick. So the interval pattern for a Phrygian mode, Phrygian minor mode, would be root, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Okay? I can play any note, and if I follow it with that same sequence, it will be the Phrygian minor mode. Okay? And I could go through that with every single one of these. So to transfer that to guitar, I mean, it's really the same thing. You're just changing instruments, right? I just need to realize that and I could do this in any key, right? I just chose C because it's easier. There's no black notes, but it would work the same in any key on your guitar if you play a note and follow it by that interval pattern. You're going to get those modes. So in any given time in the key of C, I'm playing the C. I learned the C scale, that C shape. And if that's all I know, well, okay, I can play in C major. And if someone plays in D minor, I can keep playing that same scale and it's going to fit. And if they play in E minor, I could play that same scale and it would fit. Okay, the same notes. What's important to remember when you're playing the modes is really where you're starting and ending and where your tonal center is, right? So for instance, when I went to D, I kept coming back to that D. You want to kind of stay, reference that tonal center. But I could keep playing the same notes I was playing for the happy C, but if I'm doing it against a C or against a D, it'll still have that minor sound to it. Okay? That's why I like using the keyboards. It's just easier to visualize how the modes work that way. And you transpose it to the guitar the same way. That's why we learn those 5 shapes, right? We learn each degree of the scale starts its own mode. So hopefully that cleared things up a little and didn't just make things muddier. For me, it's just easier to put it together, mentally when I see it laid out on a piano, because it makes so much more sense. It's so much easier to explain the intervals on a piano. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please take a minute and do that. Click on the subscribe button and click on that notification bell, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.